And welcome everybody to this week's video. In this video, I want to look into a video clip and discussion that Sadhguru made in regards to the practice of Reiki. Now, love him or hate him, I know people have a lot of mixed feelings about Sadhguru. This is not a personal opinion on him. It's simply an opinion on what he's saying in this clip and his interpretation and belief on the practice of Reiki, and in many ways on the dangers of Reiki. Now, there's a video that I'll link here as well. It's on my channel about the dangers of Reiki, where I'm kind of going into this topic in a little more detail. But here in this video, I want to focus specifically on what Sadhguru is saying in this clip and why I think not only is he correct, but why it's so important for our practice. So let's have a listen.
If you see people bursting out here with different kinds of energies, whatever, it's the milder lot, they're more violent people who they're a burst of energy. If we want to convert them into healers, they would be very effective healers, no question about it. But if anybody attempts any such thing, they had it. I'll wrap them up in such a way that they'll never again know anything spiritual in their whole life. And definitely we'll check them out of this place also, because we don't want such people. Not because we are against relieving another person's pain, but you meddling with another person's life process without knowing the whole of it is irresponsible. It is like you saw, these days you can see videos of major surgeries happening. So you saw a video like this, you observed everything very carefully. So tomorrow somebody has a problem, you take a shaving razor and decide to do a surgery upon him. I'm telling you, some people may survive this. People have survived such things, isn't it? Many times in battle zones, in nature, when accidents happen, people have performed absolutely crude surgeries upon somebody and they have survived. But that doesn't mean that's the way to do surgery, isn't it? That's not the way to do surgery, isn't it so? It's just that some people might have survived such surgeries. In extraordinary conditions, it was done. So, any kind of meddling with other people's energies is very juvenile. It's coming out of a certain immaturity and a certain egoistic state of wanting to play God.
Now, in this video, you can hear Sadhguru saying some things like that Reiki is a meddling in the affairs of somebody else's karmic journey or their own journey with their own healing or their own spiritual development. And you can hear him also say that such an individual will fully stop their own spiritual progression. Now, albeit those are some pretty direct and pretty non-negotiable statements that he's making, but I do think that he's saying something that's very, very valid here in regard to our practice. See, with Reiki, we have to remember that the only onus that we have, or the only thing that we can affect change in regard to, is ourselves. If you look at the three tenets of Usui Reiki Roho, in particular the three kind of core practices of this modality, it's the daily recitation of the precepts, daily self-practice, and the attunement process. Notice again that all of those focus just on you. They don't focus on anybody else. And this, to me, is really important when we look at what Sadhguru is talking about. If we start to recognize that the practice of Reiki is only internal, it's only for me. Even if I'm working on somebody else, it's really only for me. Even if I'm feeling something or experiencing something in a session that I might believe is part of the other person, it's really only for me, right? Because my experience and my connection to the external world is simply just my experience. So I'll give you an example of that right now here in Hong Kong as I'm filming this. It's another hot and humid day. As you can see behind me, you can see the humidity in the air, but that's my experience, right? I can walk past so many people, bless them, and they don't seem to be affected by the heat, but I'm affected by it. It's hot, right? And it's humid here. So I have to look only at that. I can't gauge my experience on Hong Kong or my time here in the city by the way other people interpret it, by the way other people seem to be existing. And it's much the same with our Reiki practice, right? The only thing that I can work on is myself. So when I have a belief that I am able to heal somebody else, or when I have a belief that I'm able to do something to somebody else, this is what I think Sadhguru is referring to when he's saying that we are meddling in the affairs, or the trajectory, as it were, of somebody else's journey. You see, if we start to interpret their journey, then we take the power away from the individual. We take the power for that individual to heal and that individual to take a step further on their journey. In many ways, we relinquish that power from them, and from their perspective then, it's as if they are subjugating themselves to that healing journey. And what I mean by subjugation here is they are taking away some of their own power, they're taking away some of their own agency, and they're putting that on somebody else. And I think that's a big problem. Now, of course, our journey as we heal can be very difficult, and we need support, we need help, right? And things can be scary, things can be intimidating. We might feel that we can't do it. We might feel that it's impossible to continue on our journey. I think every single one of these trepidations or fears can be easily circumnavigated if you work with a practitioner who is basing their Reiki practice in neutrality, like is argued and positioned in Usui Reiki Roho, this idea of Shin Shin Kaizen, Usui Reiki Roho, which is the real name of the practice, which means the continuous mind and then body improvement of Usui Reiki. Or if you look at the master level, if you've gone to Shimpuden, and you've probably heard this on my channel as well, this idea of Onsen Ritsume. Onsen Ritsume is this existence that we seek out to try to maintain our waking existence within, that is tranquil. And so Onsen Ritsume is this idea of a peaceful mind and a still body. It's an idea that we can meet every moment in our life with peace, and this is indeed what the precepts are talking about after all, right? So if we go back then to this idea of what Sadhguru is talking about, this kind of meddling in the affairs of other people, and the idea that we stop fully the spiritual growth of our own self, I want to unpack those just a little bit further. It's really important to take our practice of Reiki from this perspective that if we hold a session or we hold space for somebody else and we do a lot of mystical things like opening chakras and balancing things and channeling things and doing psychic surgery and promising upgrades and all of this type of stuff. Now, what are we really doing? Now, in my opinion, and it's not just in my opinion, I'll explain why here, but in my opinion, what we're really doing is we're staying in the delusion of the ego. And why I'm saying this is not my opinion is because, you know, when you are practicing, for example, in Japan, or when you are working with somebody even outside of Reiki, and this is a point that I've made on the channel, I know many times as well, if you go and seek out spiritual guidance from somebody who is very deep in their practice, none of these claims would ever be made. There would never be a claim made that you can upgrade somebody or that you can attune them to higher vibrational energy or anything like that. That's simply the mindset of the individual. So when Sadhguru is saying that we are meddling in the affairs of somebody else, notice what we're doing. In many ways, this is giving false hope. Now, I want to be very sympathetic to the idea, even false hope provides some hope. And I'm not trying to contradict myself here. I still don't think we should be doing this. I still don't think we should be interjecting our beliefs or our thoughts or our interpretations of somebody else's journey into that person after they come out of a session, for instance. This is found quite often in Western Reiki, for example. Now, why am I saying, though, there's still hope? Because sometimes things get really dark, and sometimes things can be really heavy, they can be scary. We might think, I deal with this all the time with clients, with students, where going into that darkness or going into the self, we might be afraid of that. We might be afraid of the darkness. But until we go into it enough to recognize that the darkness simply doesn't really exist, it's just an aspect of the mind, until we do that, then we're going to be afraid of the unknown, right? So this is kind of the meddling in the affairs, because if we meddle in those affairs, then that individual who is receiving the session, they might stop their healing journey altogether, or they might put all of the demand for results onto you, the practitioner. So in reality, what's happening is they're not doing the healing work they need to do themselves. Now go back to the beginning of the video and remember what I was saying, that everything that I experience, like the heat here in Hong Kong right now, it's really humid here right now today. I think today, I'm not even sure how this is possible, but I think today it's 100% humidity, but I digress. I'm sure you can see it on me. I digress. Everything that we are recognizing in our existence is a reflection of our own journey, right? So here's, I think, where there's a big pitfall in the practice, especially in the practice of attachment. If everything that I witness is simply a part of my experience being reflected back to me, right? Well, then what happens if I'm giving a healing session and I have something really profound happen, like maybe an archangel comes to me and tells me that I need to tell something to that person or whatever? If I don't recognize that that message is actually for me and not for that person, then I'm not recognizing that we are all connected. I'm not recognizing this understanding of what Reiki really is, that Reiki is the energy of all things. It's the energy that connects and binds everything in the universe, right? So a message for the person on the table is really a message for me. That's why I've received it in my mind. It's not for the other person. And even if it was 100% for the other person, it's still coming through my mind, it's still coming through my ego, it's still coming through this thing that I call Bruce. So it's not a pure message, right? So we have to look at it like this. And as soon as we start to look at the person on the table as the receiver and the person holding the session as the giver, then we are back in the world of duality. We're back in this world of I can do this to you. And so that means that we're also back in the world of I can understand this about your journey. I can interpret this about your journey. I can assist you on your journey. So we're never recognizing that the person on the table is actually part and parcel of our own journey, right? What they're healing from is most likely also what we're healing from. So what do we recognize here? We have to recognize this understanding that if I have somebody on the table and my belief about them is omnidirectional, meaning I'm the healer, they're the client, then I'm missing the point of the non-duality or the non-dual aspect of Reiki, right? And this then gets into Sadhguru's second point, where he's saying that our spiritual development will stop altogether. I'm sure many people listening to this video can probably think of people who speak like this. But when we get locked in the experiential nature of our own Reiki practice, which can be very, very beguiling and very seductive, right? The idea of feeling energy and moving it and doing all these things. It happens to me in almost every one of my self sessions and every one of my sessions with my clients. I feel something, I interpret something, I see something, I whatever. The point is, do you come back to your own stillness, right? Because what I think Sadhguru is getting at here with this idea of our spiritual development stopping altogether is if we get seduced by those images and those understandings, then we get locked in the framework of the ego. We get locked in the need for such outcome, and we get locked in our own belief of ourself that we can provide those outcomes for other people. So all of those are traps, full stop, of the ego, right? 100%. You know, and I'm always reminded of this when I go and when I'm practicing in Japan. Like, I'll be there in just a few weeks for my next upcoming pilgrimage. And when I'm there and I'm practicing, there's never a discussion about any of these things. There's never a discussion about channeling or interpreting or feeling or downloading or bringing messages to somebody else. There's simply placing your hands, surrendering, and letting go. That's it. That's all we do, right? Because we have to recognize that for me to let go fully, I have to let go of the idea that I'm a Reiki master, I'm a Reiki healer, I am a practitioner, anything like that. We have to recognize that the person on the table is simply a manifestation and a reflection of ourself, just like everything else in the world here is. Everything is a manifestation and a reflection of what you're going through right now, right, in life. So I think Sadhguru really does hit the mark in this video. Again, it's not a discussion on do I agree with him or do I not in general. I know it's a very polarizing topic sometimes with what he talks about and so on. But in this video, I think there's a really important point. I think it could have been delivered with a little bit more tact and a little bit more of an approachable manner, perhaps. But nonetheless, I think that the point that he's making is very, very important. You know, like he says, you wouldn't just go on to YouTube and watch a couple videos on surgery and then do surgery for somebody else. I think that's akin to what a lot of people's Reiki journeys can be like, by the way. We can learn Reiki, well, you can go online and you can learn it in a very dishonest way immediately if you wish to. You can watch videos on YouTube that give you free Reiki attunements and free Reiki courses and all that type of stuff. And then we are going to be stuck in the belief that we are now healers, right? Well, healing what? What is it that Reiki heals? If everything around you is a reflection of yourself, then you're really working to quiet everything around you so that you can recognize Onsen Ritsume in yourself, right? So, you know, I think that this is a very interesting topic. I think it's one that we should all hold very dear. I think it's one that we should keep as a kind of center point and cornerstone to our own practice. And this understanding really does help me. And what I would encourage everybody to take away from this video is, and maybe you've never done this and it would be a first. There's a first time for everything, right? And so that's very beautiful. So if this is hitting you when you're new in your practice, then I'd really encourage you to just sit down and do your Reiki practice with as still of a mind as you can possibly cultivate. If something comes to you, let it come to you, doesn't matter. If you see a vision, you hear a voice, you see colors, you feel something in somebody else, you scan for the Boyusan, whatever it might be, just do those things and let them pass. Let them move through you as opposed to being something that we attach to. And further, and I think even more importantly, let that practice be something that sits with you neutrally, that we don't pass on to somebody else in language like, I felt this inside of you, but I opened and unblocked your chakras, or I did whatever, right? If we do all that, then we can start to recognize a practice that is closer to Onsen Ritsume and further away from the entrapment of the ego and the missteps of a practice based in doing. We can simply start to surrender into Reiki being the energy of all things, and we can feel perhaps a deeper understanding to our practice as we cultivate the stillness in our mind. So I hope that helps. I hope you've enjoyed this kind of discussion on Sadhguru's point here in your Reiki practice, and I hope it helps you with your journey. Thank you so much, everybody, as always, for your support of the channel. I really appreciate it, and please let me know what you think about the video in the comments below. As always, be well, and In Gassho to all.